The engagement hall shimmered with lights, flowers, and carefully arranged smiles. I stood near the entrance holding the modest gift I could afford, watching my parents move proudly from table to table as they introduced my sister to the guests. When an aunt asked about me, my mother gave a light laugh. "Oh, don't ask about her. She's still figuring out life. Some people are just slow." A few people smiled politely. A few didn't bother hiding their amusement. My father added she never had big dreams like her sister. Simple mind, simple life. They said it so casually, like this line had been practiced for years. I felt eyes turn toward me, measuring, judging, dismissing. My sister adjusted her expensive dress and kept smiling for photos, as if I wasn't even there. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct them. I simply smiled and stepped aside, because I had learned something important. People speak the loudest when they know the least. The music felt louder than before. The hall felt smaller. I walked quietly toward the reception desk to ask for some water and a moment to breathe. Before I could speak, the hotel manager hurried toward me, slightly out of breath. "Ma'am, we've been trying to reach you. Your office called earlier about the payment confirmation for tonight's event." I blinked, surprised by his urgency. He continued respectfully. "Everything is arranged exactly as you requested. If you need any changes, please let me know." My parents turned. My sister turned. The same relatives who were laughing moments ago were now staring in confusion. I kept my expression calm. "Everything is fine, thank you." The manager nodded and walked away. A strange silence fell around us. My mother looked at me. "What payment?" I gave a small, polite smile and said nothing. For the first time that evening, nobody had a joke to make. They thought they had already decided who I was. They had no idea what I was about to do next. 6 months earlier, when my parents said they couldn't waste money on my plans, I stopped asking for support. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped expecting them to understand. Instead, I worked. Extra hours at my day job, freelance projects late into the night, online contracts on weekends. I saved quietly, carefully, without telling anyone what I was building. At home, all the attention revolved around my sister's engagement. The outfits, the guest list, the venue, the decorations, everything had to look perfect. My parents often complained about how expensive the hotel was, how the payments were stressing them out. But in front of relatives, they acted as if everything was effortless. One evening, I overheard my mother say, "If the cost increases, we'll have to reduce the guest list. There's no other way." My sister panicked. She wanted a grand function, perfect pictures, a perfect impression. That night, I made a decision. Not to impress them, not to prove anything. Just to remove the silent pressure I could see on their faces. The next morning, I called the hotel. I paid a large part of the advance through my company account and asked the manager to keep my name confidential unless necessary. I knew if I told my parents, they would refuse out of ego. They would say they didn't need my help. So I stayed quiet. Back in the engagement hall, whispers slowly started spreading after the manager spoke to me. Did she pay for this? What does she even do? Since when is she working in an office? My father looked confused. My mother looked uncomfortable. For the first time, they weren't speaking about me with certainty. They were trying to understand me. And I didn't rush to explain. I returned to my seat, took a sip of water, and watched the room carefully. Because I wasn't trying to prove them wrong anymore. I had already outgrown their opinion. They were still talking about me. I was already far ahead of them. Later that night, when most guests were busy around the stage, my father quietly came and sat beside me. His voice was lower than usual. Why didn't you tell us?" I looked toward the lights, the laughter, the photographs being taken. "You never asked," I replied gently. My mother joined us. There was no mockery in her eyes now. No pride either. Just a long, thoughtful silence. "We thought you weren't doing much with your life," she admitted. I smiled, not bitterly, not proudly, just calmly. "Not everything needs to be announced," I said. They didn't apologize directly, but their expressions had changed. The certainty with which they once described me was gone. For the first time, they were seeing me without assumptions. My sister walked over after a while, still in her glittering dress. She looked at me differently too, as if trying to match this quiet version of me with the person she thought she knew. "You could have told us," she said softly. "I didn't do it for appreciation," I replied. "I did it because I could, and because I wanted peace, not noise." No one argued. No one laughed. No one had anything to add. When I finally stood to leave, my parents didn't introduce me as the simple one anymore. They didn't introduce me at all. They simply walked beside me in silence. That silence said more than any apology could. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They didn't know I was simply busy becoming strong. A week after the engagement, my mother called. Her tone was unfamiliar, careful, almost respectful. "We were thinking, you should handle the final payment for the wedding arrangements. You understand these things better." I paused, then answered calmly, "I can guide you, but you should make the decisions." There was no argument, no correction, just agreement. Later, my sister messaged me asking for advice about vendors and budgets. For the first time, she asked for my opinion instead of ignoring it. Nothing dramatic had happened. No loud apologies, no emotional speeches. Just a quiet shift. They no longer spoke about me as the one who was still figuring out life. They spoke to me as someone who already had,